Greetings, NFL fans. Today is Tuesday, February 10th. This is the Shutdown Corner Podcast. I am Kevin Kaduk, here as always with Frank Schwab and Jay Busbee. Fellas, starting off on a boxing note, and we're going to segue into our first topic using this. Tomorrow, February 11th, marks the 25th anniversary of Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson in Tokyo, Japan. And in an age where everybody says they shocked the world, I think that might be the truly most shocking thing that ever happened in sports.
It's got to be up there.
Wow.
I mean, Tyson was immortal at that time. He was
totally
an icon beyond anything that we have right now. The Patriots, nothing compared to what Tyson's rep was at that time.
Yeah. Oh, it would have been, the rep if like the Patriots went 16-0 every single season. Like, that was Tyson's rep at that point. Like, nobody can beat this guy ever. And I had never heard of Buster Douglas. I didn't even know that fight was
and especially not a man named Buster Douglas, who was just kind of designed to be a tomato can to fight in front of all the fans in Japan. And somehow he pulled it off. It's still crazy. First of all, I can't believe that it's been 25 years since then.
Yeah, thanks for making me feel old this morning. I appreciate it.
A lot of the stuff kind of like you hear about it, you're like, okay, well, I can buy that. Never mind. By Nirvana came out 20 years ago. That kind of seems like it. But that, I don't know. That still seems like yesterday to me. I don't know why.
That's the creepy thing, is that we're starting to get to the point now where stuff that's well within our consciousness is a long, long time ago, and you can start to see it. There are kids now who have no idea, and they're not even kids. There are millennials who have no idea that Mike Tyson was anything other than a cartoon and a joke.
the guy who's in the Hangover movies, yeah.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, I know that guy. He was he had the tiger in the Hangover 1. Yeah. Oh yeah, I know him. This is how old that fight was. I didn't watch it. I didn't even remember it was going on. I remember waking up the next morning, and my routine was I'd watch headline news at 20 and 50 because that's when sports was. And there's no internet. I mean, this is how you got the news. And they said, this guy, Buster Douglas, never heard of this guy. Buster Douglas has knocked out Mike Tyson, and there was already that the controversy about, was it the long count when Buster Douglas got knocked out in the 8th, I believe. They're already talking about the controversy of Don King saying, and I just thought, yeah, of course, there's no way that this really happened, that this is going to be reversed and Tyson's going to get the win and all that. I mean, it's just still this day easily the most shocking. I wasn't really, I was alive in 1980 for the hockey thing. I don't think that was more shocking than Buster Douglas, was it?
It's probably up there. That's probably the one big competitor, I would think. Sharing my personal story on this, I remember I was at church, and we came out, and everyone gathers and kind of talks, and a friend came up and said, "Did you hear Mike Tyson beat Buster Douglas?" And I absolutely could not believe it. I thought he was playing a joke. And at my church, they used to have this little room where they would stack Sunday copies of the Chicago Tribune, and you could go up there and pay your $1.50 or whatever it was and get it. And I wanted to get the newspaper to actually prove that it happened. I actually thought I would be able to find in those pages. And my dad was like, well, first of all, it happened late at night in Japan, so probably not going to be in there. And the Sunday editions that they delivered were the ones that you got at Saturday at 3 p.m. So I had to wait until we got home. And I don't know how. I mean, it must have gone on CNN and confirmed it that way. But it was just one of those things that you absolutely could not believe.
Does it take on more status because we didn't experience it all at the same time, the way that we do through Twitter now? Because if this had happened now, if it's 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, you're going to have people texting you saying, "Hey, you got to watch the fight, you got to tune in," and it's not going to have that same kind of sledgehammer because you're going to be building up to it.
I often wonder about that. How will people? But if you look back at it, right? I mean, people, the way we consumed the Patriots versus the Seahawks last Sunday. Yeah, that was very immediate. We were all making jokes. But 10 years from now, we're probably not going to remember those jokes. We're probably not going to remember that we were watching it with people on Twitter. We're just going to really remember the plays, right? So it's still going to seem as awesome.
Yeah, I think so. But I get what Jay's coming from, of the mystique of that upset where
Oh, yeah.
It happened in the middle of the night. Nobody knew what was going on.
On the other side of the world.
Yeah.
To a guy named Buster, who even back then sounded like a 30s movie villain.
Right.
Buster Douglas, see? He's taking down the champ, see?
Tyson hadn't trained at all. There's a great book, a really, really good book on, it's called The Last Great Fight. It's on the Buster Douglas-Tyson fight, and it's by... I wish I could remember. Give him credit. It's a great writer. I can't remember who, but it's a great look at how this all happened. Who Buster Douglas is. He's famous forever for this one great night. And we've all seen the fight since. I think the first time I saw that fight was when the videotape came out, and I rented it from Blockbuster. Like, this is. Seriously,
finally, a videotape I'm not ashamed to rent from Blockbuster.
I didn't. I mean, there was no YouTube, and because HBO, I think, had the rights, or Showtime, that ESPN showed it ad nauseum. This is how you consume things back then. Like months later,
there were no GIFs.
It wasn't. It wasn't a fluke. Buster Douglas destroyed Mike Tyson that night. He fought a great fight, and the funny thing is, this is how corrupt boxing is. One of the judges had Tyson ahead. And it was like, honestly, how corrupt do you have to be? How corrupt? One of the three judges had Tyson ahead. That's a big trivia from that fight, was that, yes, literally, like, Buster Douglas, if you had no idea who these two fighters were, I mean, Buster Douglas won just about every round. He destroyed Mike Tyson that night. And that uppercut he hit, that basically there's a great Sports Illustrated picture where Tyson's head is almost at a 90-degree angle. Like, it was unbelievable how hard he hit him with the uppercut. And then he just pounds him down, and Jim Lampley, Mike Tyson has been knocked out. And it's even watching it on replay. I could watch it tonight if it's on ESPN Classic or something. I could still be shocked at just seeing Mike Tyson get knocked out like that.
Yeah, just trying to clamber around, trying to find his mouthpiece.
He puts it in backwards, and it's unbelievable.
Didn't they have a rematch, and Douglas had basically eaten an entire Buster Douglas in the intervening time?
Well, he fought Evander. He fought Evander next, and yes, he showed up just. Oh, it was bad times. Yeah, he showed up really overweight. He's been Buster Douglas for 6 months. I mean, here's a guy, obscurity. All of a sudden, he's like the biggest deal in sports. He shows up really overweight, and he missed with a huge haymaker uppercut that had no chance of landing, and Holyfield knocked him out. It looked like Buster didn't even really want to get up. It was one of those, okay, I got my money. But yeah, that fight. I mean, that is one of the. If you're asking me the 10 most memorable sporting events of my lifetime, that has to be in there. Even though I didn't watch it live, I didn't see it for months.
I miss the hell out of boxing from the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when you had Tyson, you had Riddick Bowe, you had Buster Douglas, you had all these guys coming up. And
you had all
George
the
Foreman still punching
George
around.
Foreman still showing up every now and then. Yeah, it was.
And you had the
great.
Leonard, Hagler, Duran, Hearns type of middleweights going on. Like, yeah, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, UFC does nothing for me, so I would.
Really? I like the fights. I think they're fun, but they're not. I mean, I've been to a UFC pay-per-view, and it's really cool. It's a great atmosphere, but I just can't imagine like it stacks up to like a great heavyweight fight in Vegas. Great title fight. Evander fighting Riddick Bowe or something like that back in the day. Even and I'm not even talking on the Ali Frazier type level. I'm just talking a big fight, not a colossal, earth-stopping fight.
Yeah, we had a little taste of that. We were Frank, you and I were out at a bachelor party in Vegas like 10 years ago for the first Jones Tarver fight.
Second one, because that's the second one. Because that was the greatest trash talk line ever. When the referee asks any more questions, and Tarver says, "Yeah, I got a question. What's your excuse tonight, Roy?" It's great. It's the best line ever. It's the best line ever. And by the way, I have an NFL story related to this fight, but go on.
We were out there, and like all these NBA players were out there, and I met LeBron James, which I've told the story before, and we were sitting next to Paul Pierce and all of his boys at a cabana at the Palms, and we of course didn't have tickets to the fight, couldn't afford anything like that, but it was kind of cool just seeing something like that, and that's not even like a huge heavyweight. It wasn't a heavyweight fight, but it wasn't the level of.
Roy Jones was a huge star at that time.
Yeah, you're not
sure.
You're not going to have Frank Sinatra and Norman Mailer showing up at a UFC fight in tuxedos. No. That just is not going to happen.
It's a different sport. I don't. But here's my NFL story from that. So we were at a cabana at the Palms, and fun time. We bet on the Belmont. We almost hit a superfecta. It's one of the greatest gambling moments of my life, even though we lost. It was so exciting. And I'm walking to make that bet, the superfecta bet, and I see Ashley Lilly. And I was covering the Broncos at the time, and here's their first round pick. I think it was after his rookie year, second year. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Are you here for the fight? Yeah, I'm here for the fight. I'm a huge boxing guy. He's telling me he's a huge boxing fan. He knows everything about boxing. I said, wow, I saw Tarver's like 4-1 on the board, and that's just crazy. I'm going to go bet on it. I'm going to go bet on Tarver. And he's like, "Why? You're wasting your money, dude. Like, why would you bet on Tarver? Roy Jones is pissed off and he's going to kill him." And so I get to the window and I look at it. And I almost bet on Tarver at 4-1. And Ashley Lilly's voice is going through my head. Don't bet it. It's wasting your money. And I did not bet it. And Tarver knocked him out like the second round. And we're at minicamp a month later. And I saw Lilly, and I'm like, dude, like, I told you. And so he's walking with Rod Smith, and he just starts dying laughing. And as he's walking away, he grabs Rod Smith. He's like, "Oh, I got to tell you this story." And they just walk off. And it was like, on the punchline, the guy who did not bet, Antonio Tarver, because of Denver Broncos receiver Ashley Lilly. There's my NFL story.
Wow. Never listened to a man named Ashley. That's your first mistake.
I was, yes. I guess I would have forgotten the money and the win off of that, but I remember that story, so I guess it's worth it. I guess.
So, okay, we haven't talked about football until this point. I wanted to segue into a discussion of what was the most shocking moment, story, anything in NFL history. And it's probably a long list, and it depends which way you want to go. Number one, I think inarguable, is O.J. Simpson.
Well, are you talking on field or off field?
Anything.
Yeah, I would think that connected with the NFL, that would be. I mean, that's a whole separate podcast in itself. That June day, 1994.
Yeah,
It's gotta be right. Yeah, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what would. It would seem dumb to even try to compare, right?
Let's throw that out the window. What's next?
Okay, that's it. It's almost
is it the Baltimore Colts leaving for Indianapolis overnight? Is it the Giants upsetting the previously undefeated Patriots?
I would say either that. I would say
beating the Colts in Super Bowl III.
Yeah, the Jets is a big one after nameless guarantee because no one believed him.
It's an enormous one for me, and it shouldn't be on the list, but it probably is. Eugene Robinson getting arrested the night before. It is. Because people who don't know the story, Eugene Robinson was soliciting a prostitute the night before the Super Bowl, and Eugene Robinson was like the Bart Star Man of the Year award winner. Like
he won the award earlier in the day. He basically went from the award ceremony straight to the streets. Yeah.
Right, and I remember seeing that on the bottom line on ESPN and just being like a couple minutes, like stunned. Like I needed to wait for the bottom line. I think we were like going somewhere, and I told my wife Jenny, like, no, wait, I got to see this again. Like I needed to read it again because I didn't really believe what happened. And that, to me, just in my own personal, it doesn't match up to Super Bowl III, but in my own personal thing, that was the most shocking moment of like, wow. I just every single circumstance of that was just mind blowing.
You know, one that's been forgotten, if we're talking shocking off the field, is the whole Ray Caruth story with his pregnant wife and hiring the hitman and all of that. That's basically faded from the headlines, and the NFL, I'm sure, is happy about that. But at the time, it was like, what the? How is this happening? How is this happening in this world?
Yeah, Junior Seau's up there too. When I heard about Junior Seau's death, I was just stunned for a little bit. I mean, we knew about that incident where he tried running off the road and he explained he fell asleep or whatever. We kind of just forgot about Junior Seau after that. At least I did. And then all of a sudden he just killed himself. That was, I mean, that's up there. That's up there. It's just a shocking NFL moment.
Chris Henry getting thrown out of a truck.
Yeah.
I mean, we've kind of taken this a little off track.
We've gone to a dark place.
Exactly.
What else? Trying to think of what other plays.
I mean, if we're not getting
reception,
if we're going to kind of eliminate the very tragic elements, I mean, we're just going to kind of draw it back into football, where we're not getting people turning it off, crying right now.
Our listeners in a fetal position at the gym. Sorry.
It was a huge shock. Was Green Bay Packers signing Reggie White? That was, if you remember, everybody was in on Reggie White. Like, he still to this day is probably the biggest free agent of all time. Probably bigger than Peyton because he was coming off injuries, and even Drew Brees because he wasn't Drew Brees yet. Reggie White was the free agent in NFL history, and little old Green Bay, Wisconsin signed him. I remember being blown away. I didn't think they had a prayer at him. That there's another shock. Not Buster Douglas-esque, but it was a pretty shocking moment.
How about in terms of plays, the Baltimore Ravens beating the Broncos a couple of years ago?
Yes,
on the Joe Flacco just flinging it.
Yeah, those everything turned. Like the Tracy Porter one was a pretty big shock because it just turned like that. I mean, the entire Super Bowl turns on a dime. Or the Music City Miracle's another one where you just never saw it coming, and all of a sudden, Kevin Dyson's running down the sideline, and that was a huge one.
That'd be cool if we just had a play to talk about where the Super Bowl changed completely on one play.
That one was shocking because, but it was different because, and maybe it was different for anybody else, but for me personally, it was just, I was ready for anything at that moment of that game because it was so back and forth, and it was just, everything was so crazy in those, that 15 minutes of real time. It didn't even shock me. It was like, oh my God, yes, of course that's how this game ends. That's something crazy.
You're thinking that there's still one more twist, that Brady's going to get sacked for a safety.
Yeah, right. Like he's going to do the all the right moves thing and fumble on the snap or something. Yeah.
Where we go next?
You haven't come up with any, Kevin. What?
I just did. I let off the whole thing. I sent the Baltimore Colts into Indy.
You did. The Baltimore Colts moving was pretty crap. We're kind of facing
everyone names the best 30 for 30s, and no one ever says "and the band played on," but that was one of my favorites. Barry Levinson, that one was so good, and I think it really set the tone for everything else.
Not to totally go on a tangent. Yeah, it really did. That was one of the first ones. The Gretzky one was the first one, I think. But have you watched the Russian hockey one? Not to get on a complete tangent, but I haven't yet. It's on my DVR.
So there are two Russian hockey ones? There's one that's out in the theaters called Red Army, and then there's a 30 for 30.
Okay.
Is that right?
I don't know. I just know of the 30.
I think that is. I'm confused as hell.
It's a little bit of propaganda here, man. I think that the Russians are trying to secretly win back the war, win back the gold.
I've heard nothing but good things about that. The 30 for 30 one, though. I've heard it's great.
It's the most oddly timed thing ever because it's a year out from the Olympics of last year, and I guess it's the 25th anniversary. But that's right. The Olympics were in Russia last year, and they were in Russia, and it was the Olympics. So why wouldn't you roll it out in 2014? It was kind of you guys get this idea last year. Or
they came up with the idea a week before Sochi, and they're like, son of a bitch.
Maybe when they were out to Sochi, they were talking to Tretiak and all those guys. I don't know. Who knows?
So I haven't seen the 30 for 30. It's already aired. Is that right?
Yeah, it just came out Sunday night.
Okay, yes, so it's probably on my DVR.
I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
And what's it called?
The Men of the Miracles of Men, or I don't know. It's
of Miracles of
Men. Yeah, of Miracles of Men.
Okay, so there's another one called Red Army that is out at independent theaters. So it's kind of strange.
Is it as good as Red Dawn? Because that's my standard for Russian movies.
I have no idea.
The thing about the NFL is that we're never going to get a 1980 USSR type of event because nobody's that big of an underdog ever. It just never happens. The 07 Giants are probably one of the biggest upsets of all time. I think the 07 Giants were a 9-point underdog or something like that against the Patriots, the 18-0 Patriots. You're never going to get, oh my God, do you believe in miracles? It's the NFL. Everybody's pretty good.
I think the Giants got pretty. I don't want to say it was close to 1980, but I was shocked with that. Truly shocked with the result of that one. I didn't think they had any chance. Even given Week 17, I didn't think they had any chance.
Another quick gambling story, because I have many of them, because that's what I enjoy doing. In 07, I was in this football pool, and I was terrible. Honest to God, terrible. As bad as you can get on your picks. And it went that when the money came out at the end of the regular season, you could take the payout or pick a playoff team, and there was a separate payout for the playoffs. And I was so bad, I got the second to last pick, and there was no money spots left. And the guy asks me, "There's two teams left. Do you want the Giants or Titans?" I'm like, I guess give me the Giants. Who cares? I'm not winning on either one, right? And so before the Giants played the Packers in the NFC title game, my buddy who was in this pool emails me. He's like, "I'm really rooting for you, man. I'm really rooting for the Giants for you." I'm like, "I'm not a Giants fan. What are you talking about?" And I totally forgot this. And so my buddy's like, "Dude, you're in this major big money pool now, and you have the Giants." I'm like, oh my God. So they were huge underdogs against the Packers. They pulled that one out. They were huge underdogs against the Patriots. And I swear, when he hit Plaxico Burress for that touchdown, one of the great gambling moments ever. It was just fun. Because I literally, that was the miracle on ice for me. Winning with the Giants.
Frank Schwab had a 36-inch vertical after that play.
It was, I hadn't even, and watching that game, I knew what was on the line money-wise for me. And I never thought until Tyree caught that ball, that's when I was like, oh my God, I might actually get this. I actually have a shot here. Wow.
This is not the right kind of gambling story, man. Yeah, this is not the right kind of gambling story. You don't end up in ruins there.
I know. I have. Oh, trust me. We could do a separate podcast on me ending up in ruins gambling, but that's for another day.
Frank will to balance out the IRS inquiries. He needs something on record, so
yeah,
we'll
I
do that next.
Should. I probably. Yeah, we were just playing for fun, guys.
Wait a minute. Rewind. Wait a minute, IRS agent. Rewind 10 minutes when I told the Ashley Lee story.
Yeah, I should get some credit for that. I should get the net balance. I should have won a lot of money that night and didn't. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not a big gambler. Are you, Jay?
No, Frank and I were talking about this. I don't do a whole lot except for I have family stuff. Frank and I used to play a lot of online poker before they shut it all down, and took a bit of our money with it because we decided we didn't want to get on the government watch list asking for our money back when the poker sites went down a few years back.
Poker Star still has some of my money. Yes,
I've gotten in here and there, and it ruins the games for me. I know a lot of people like it because it gets them in, and I just get too worked up. Here's the thing.
That's why I like it. That's why I like gambling.
Yeah, people ask me all the time, do you play fantasy hockey because you're such a big hockey fan? And I'll say no, and this is why. Because I played one year, and I had, Jonathan Taves and Marion Host on my team or whatever, 2 Blackhawks. And I'd watch the Blackhawks games, and I would get pissed off when Patrick Kane would score. Like, I was like, why is that? You know what I mean? So I was like, this is not worth it.
I can see that, and I've heard that from a lot of people. As far as fantasy goes, I don't know. I mean, gambling probably the same, too. Like, if you had the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, you're probably like, that was the worst Super Bowl ever. I hate it. Screw it. I could see that. But in fantasy especially, and I don't know if it's everybody talks about, especially old-timers talk about fantasy being a bad thing because we're not rooting for the game anymore. We're rooting for, whoever, Alfred Morris to get a bunch of yards and a touchdown instead of rooting for football. But I guess this is just how people watch games now. That's their version of the NFL for them.
I can still appreciate the game within the concept of rooting for Alfred Morris or RG3 or whoever. I can still separate.
But it's true. If you have Alfred Morris and the Redskins are at the 1 yard line and they run a play action fake or they run it at fullback, they always run to. What's his name? I can't. Number 36. His name.
Johnny Vulture is what his name is.
Yeah, basically Johnny Vulture. You are sitting there and you're not enjoying the game anymore. You are just MFing that number 36 fullback who just scored again and took away your touchdown. I can see it changes how you watch.
With the caveat that FanDuel is a wonderful company and you should all invest in it. I am terrified to get involved in those daily fantasy sports just because I mean it would be all Sunday you guys would be pinging me and I'd be screw you man, I've got to see if Julio Jones gets his touchdown on this run. Shut up.
Yeah. I've always liked fantasy football more for the Sunday night and Monday night implications. Like I'm going to sit there, I'm going to watch the Bears, I'm going to watch all the games, and that's fine. And I watch my little stat tracker and I watch it rack up. But I really like Sunday night. Okay, I've got this kicker. This guy's got this second wide receiver. So I like being plugged into those games.
There is something about that when you go all 22 on that one number 2 receiver. And you're watching. All right, go to him. Go to him.
It's a terrible way to watch football. And I'm in a couple IDP leagues, which are individual defensive players. So you have 3 or 4 linebackers and 3 defense. There's nothing worse than watching a freaking linebacker for an entire Monday night game needing 4 tackles to win. There's nothing worse. It is a terrible, terrible, terrible way to watch football. Trust me.
I don't know why you're even playing that. Yeah,
it is awful. But those leagues are really fun, and I'm a huge fantasy guy. But I'm more of a fantasy baseball guy. But that's probably a different topic altogether. But yes, gambling absolutely positively has changed the NFL in a good way, and that's why I never understand why the NFL takes this public stance against gambling, even though they put out the injury report, which is for gamblers. It's not for anybody else, and. But they've embraced fantasy, but not gambling. I don't get it. I don't get where Roger Goodell draws these moral lines where fantasy, as he famously said, is for families bonding or whatever. That's ridiculous. I'm not bonding with any families. I'm trying to win some money on Rob Gronkowski scoring a touchdown in Week 16, okay? But I don't get why that's different than betting on Seattle -7 against St. Louis. I just don't. I'm not a big... Obviously, I'm all for gambling. Go for it. I don't see why that's a bad thing or why it would hurt the NFL. The NFL's built basically on fantasy football and gambling.
Here's what I can't get about that. I can understand the distinction. You're right all the way through. I can understand, however, the distinction they make between fantasy sports and gambling. I can see that they can draw some kind of semantic line there. What I can't understand is how you have players actually talking about fantasy teams and being on their fantasy team and having themselves or having somebody else that they're going and not getting a talking to for the league say, hey, don't even hint at that.
Yeah, that's weird to me. Like Larry Donnell famously earlier this year said he benched himself and then he scored 3 touchdowns in a game. And I'm not saying anybody's tanking for their fan. That's the thing. It's like, that's another thing. People talk about like, oh, well, don't you think that, the Seahawks could have, I heard this in an email, the Seahawks probably had a big bet on the game on the Patriots, and that's why they threw the touch, or that pass, it got intercepted. And it's like, well, you know what, Pete Carroll probably makes, $4 million a year. I don't think he's really worried about a $5,000 bet.
He's like Michael Jordan, man. He's got to win everything, every bet that he lays down.
I think Pete
Rick Neuheisel's ears just perked up. Like, yeah, Frank.
But that's the thing. I can see college sports being fixed because those kids don't get paid. And if you are at Akron, if you're a basketball player at Akron and somebody comes to you and says, hey, man, I'm going to give you $5,000 to throw the game, you might listen because you're broke. Possible. If you're an NFL player and some guy comes up to you and says, "Hey man, I'll give you $10,000 to throw the game," you're probably like, "Whatever. I make $10,000 on radio appearances last week. Like I'm not doing that. Like what? Why would I do that? Like so, I don't see why the NFL doesn't embrace it. And because legal gambling's better than illegal gambling. If there's that's the thing people don't understand about gambling really. If like the Arizona State game last Saturday night has $5 million come in on Arizona State and nothing come in on Arizona, they're going to tip off the FBI. They're going to say, hey, we have some weird betting patterns on this random, football game or basketball game. Keep an eye on this. That doesn't happen in illegal markets. Nobody's tipping off the FBI if you're an illegal bookie in New York. So I don't see why the NFL just doesn't go all in with gambling, kind of like Adam Silver is. I respect his view. He's kind of very progressive with that.
Yeah, I think we're probably headed towards a time where we do see that. It could be another revenue source. You get it up on the level. You talk about these leagues wanting to maximize their revenues. If they could get a piece of that pie, that's a way to get to $25 billion.
Let me ask a different way for both you guys. What would your opinion be of let's say, just the laws all changed. If you could go to NFL.com/gambling and bet on Seattle Seahawks -7 against the St. Louis Rams, would you think that's weird? Would you think that that's bad? Would you just think that, hey, it's legal, who cares? I don't know. What would you be?
I think it would be weird right off the bat, but I think it would seem not very weird probably about 6 weeks into it.
Yeah, I would have my paycheck direct deposited to the NFL and work from there and ask them to pick up my utility bills now and then. I think that the issue, as always, is going to be people who are wondering about the league that is controlling these games having a stake in the outcome of the games and then having a possible obviously if there was any cheating found out, if it was found that the NFL was rigging games, the entire enterprise collapses. But still, you're going to have those questions every time that there's a controversial play, every time that there's a controversial ref call, you're going to have those questions.
So do you have
tells me that if this ever did happen, it wouldn't be on NFL.com, it wouldn't be on MLB.com, it would be through a shell company or some subsidiary.
It would be through CaesarsEntertainment.com or MGMGrand.com or whatever. Whoever was enterprising with that, sure. But would it change if, let's say, Roger Goodell just said, "We're cool with gambling, but we're not going to have any stake in it"? I mean, does that change it at all? I don't think it does personally. Is there
any sports league that does this around the world? Is there any precedent?
I don't think so. No. Nobody's. I don't think even the EPL or anybody is directly involved in gambling. I don't know. I've never been over to England, so I couldn't tell you. But the EPL, I mean, you can bet anywhere in London, from what I know. You can go right outside the game, place a wager, go inside and watch your team. I mean, I don't see why. I don't know. Yeah, why aren't there bookie booths outside of Mile High Stadium here in Denver where you could just bet on the Broncos and go into the game?
Is this? Is it a relic of the whole Puritan era of American history? Because you can go and at the Kentucky Derby they have a betting window in the press box. You can literally write your story. You can go bet on the horse and then come back and write about your horse that lost. So what is this? I mean, you probably know better than I do, Frank. What's the origin of this whole bias against gambling? Is it just the Black Sox fear and all of that?
I guess it's the Black Sox fear, and it's the fear that, well, I mean, it's American too, because gambling is very limited still. I can't go online and play poker, which is a game of skill. Why can't I? we're the only, from what I know, I may be wrong about this, and you don't have to correct me if I am, but we are the only country in the world that explicitly outlaws online poker. Like, we're the land of the free, Okay, well, I don't know, but it's an American attitude towards gambling that it's bad. It's bad. But we can go get bombed on alcohol and, whatever. But we can't gamble. Like, I can't put $20 on the Chicago Bulls tonight or whatever. It's a countrywide thing, and I'm not sure. That's why we tuck it in Las Vegas and Atlantic City. Now we got a lot of casinos around. But
you can also buy I don't know why an assault rifle.
I don't know why sports gambling has the stigma it does. I don't know why. It just makes no sense to me, logically, to be honest with you. I don't know why, people have to, gamble illegally online on a random NBA game tonight, and that's not okay. We're, shunned from society if we do that. Why? That's nonsensical if you think about it.
So, Frank, can I count on you for your bet later on this evening?
I'll have
you were a little slow last week, my man.
As long as you don't send Rocky to break my phone. So
you mentioned that the betting window in horse racing. I covered an Arlington Million, kind of fresh right out of college, and got out there to Arlington Racetrack, which is the racetrack here in Chicago. And someone was like, "Hey, man, you should bet on Silvano. It's 20-1 favorite, 20-1 underdog, whatever." And I was like, "Man, I'm a journalist. You can't bet on blah blah blah." Sure, of course, Silvano won. At a point in time where I probably could have used $500. Yeah. So, yeah, I've never actually bet on any other races I covered, but it's always kind of weird to me that you do walk in there and see other journalists just laying it down, and it's the sort of thing where you're out in the barns and you hear things and you kind of know things, so you could probably actually end up making pretty good side business, and I'm sure those guys do.
Sure.
Imagine if this year,
report it. If you heard of some horses, I don't know, I don't even know what the edge would be in horse racing. I'm not very smart about horse racing, but whatever edge the horse would have, he's going to win for sure. I think the ethical dilemma is, do you report it because the odds are going to go way down because it's parimutuel, right? And you're, by the time the race that 20-1 you talked about, if you reported it, put on Twitter and all that.
Exactly.
So that's tough.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable betting on that, and it's weird to me that people do, but exactly that parimutuel aspect of it, you're betting against other people. It's odd. It's a weird scene.
Imagine the outcry, though, if there had been legalized betting allowed on the Cowboys Lions and the Cowboys Packers games.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that would be the topic of conversation. That the NFL, they try to swing the action one way or the other based on the overturning the refs' calls.
But people do that anyway,
but it would be a lot more explicit. You'd have it a lot more than just the cranks in the bottom of the comment sections.
I think people just misunderstand gambling, to be honest with. Again, college games you can argue may be fixed. I can't even argue that they aren't or wouldn't be or anything like that. The odds of an NFL game being fixed, except maybe the referees, I guess, just astounding. That's just never going to happen realistically. It's just not. You'd be tipped off if there's a bet big enough to really make a difference in anybody's lives. It's just not. It's just not realistic.
JR, is there any good NASCAR gambling? How do people gamble on NASCAR?
No, it's not really. There's not a whole lot of. There's so many variables. The only thing that I could think of was that, as Frank was talking there, is in 2001, after Dale Earnhardt Sr. died, the next time they come back to Daytona, Dale Jr. wins the race, and it's a great story, and everybody's loving it. But of course, everyone's thinking, "Oh, NASCAR fixed it, NASCAR," because there are ways to do that, to give the car a little bit more horsepower, have a little bit more kick, and. I have talked with many reputable people who say, look, yeah, it's theoretically possible, but if they did this and they were found out, the entire multi-billion-dollar sport collapses because suddenly it's a fraud and it's not WWE. So,
well, my question was, though, if you're out in an RV with all your friends and whatever, blah, 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 how are you? Those people have to be gambling, right?
Oh, yes.
So what is do people just pick a driver? Do people pick the field? Is there some sort of pool or squares?
No, it's not really squares. Generally, it's whoever is sober enough to be counted on not to run off with the money is the bookie. And then you take your driver. You throw in $5, $10. There is some of that going on actually in the NASCAR Media Center as well. That you'll have people taking trifectas of drivers and things like that. But they're generally, as with every media organization, NASCAR Media, you've got people who everyone knows each other, and that people are shouting across.
You want to talk about something that would definitely get me into a sport? It'd be the ability to wager on NASCAR, because I watched Daytona, and after that. No, absolutely not. And I'm not worried about it ruining my enjoyment of the race, because I wasn't enjoying it in the first place. So.
You could bet on NASCAR in Vegas. Like it's like
you do try.
Tony Stewart is like 6-1, and Jeff Gordon's like 4-1, and that's the only two NASCAR drivers I know, so I won't keep going on.
There you
go.
But
can you do trifectas?
Yeah,
or you can
bet anything. I mean, shoot, we ought to do that, man. I mean,
and you could also do matchup. I think like some for like I'm sure for Daytona, like MGM Grand would offer like, is Jeff Gordon going to beat Tony Stewart, and Jeff Gordon's minus 110 and Tony Stewart's plus 110, and go for it, whatever the odds would be. Like you could do it that way, yeah, sure. It's like golf. Golf is the same way. Where like golf odds were ruined for years and years because Tiger Woods, basically. Like, well, at least you couldn't bet on Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods would be like 2-1 in every single tournament.
It'd be Tiger versus the field.
Yeah, and then you have to bet like Tiger.
He's 50-1 at the Masters right now. That'd
50-1, wow.
That would be a stupid bet. That would be you would be wasting money. Right? Ashley does not want you to bet Tiger Woods.
No, I will not be betting Tiger Woods.
I'm looking at the odds right now for this weekend's Sprint Unlimited race, and Dale Jr. and defending champion Kevin Harvick are both 9-1, and those are the favorites. I mean, that's how broad NASCAR is that the favorites are going off at 9-1.
Yeah, that's about right. About a 10% chance to win.
Yep.
9-1. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. From what I know of the sport.
We didn't talk anything about any present day NFL stuff. You guys? Okay
I mean, is there gambling involved? Because I could talk about that.
That's all we need. Fun these last two podcasts, though. So I think we're going to probably keep this going throughout the off season. We're probably going to throw in a couple of these. Let us know if you do like this. We like it. We're having a lot of fun talking. We're going to throw some draft stuff in there. We're going to throw combine stuff in there. I think next time I want to talk about the NFL draft in Chicago and some of these ridiculous demands that the city made, that the NFL made, and the city were like, fine, yeah.
Oh, that's good stuff.
They're closing down streets. They're promising police escorts to the draft picks and NFL dignitaries, and it's really weird. So it looks like that's probably if you're a city that wants NFL draft, this is something you're gonna have to follow. And NFL seems, hey, we weren't getting it from New York. We didn't like the deal at Radio City Music Hall, so we're gonna take it on the road, and they're getting it from towns that are more than happy to get the NFL.
The NFL is looking at the International Olympic Committee and saying, "Hey, we want a piece of that action."
Yeah, well, the new commissioner Rob Manfred in baseball has said that they're going to open the All-Star game to a bidding style process. No more of this. Hey, we're just going to rotate it around, and which I don't really like, because I do like the fact that they kind of go in these cycles. And
wouldn't the big market teams get it every year then? Like if you're blind bidding, the Yankees would get it every year, right? Or the Mets, or the Dodgers, right?
But if you're Pittsburgh and you really want all the tourism and whatever, maybe you do put together a nice package. Who knows?
I guess.
Before we close it off, gentlemen, to tie it all together,
sure.
Looked up our odds to win the 2016 Super Bowl. Right now at Bovada, Seahawks are going off at 11-2. Patriots right behind them at 6-1. So there you go.
What are the Packers?
7-1. They're the only other single-digit one right underneath it. Packers, then the Cowboys, then the Broncos, I guess, depending on where Peyton is.
Yeah.
And dead last, your Jacksonville Jaguars at 200-1.
Where's the value? You see a value team in there, Jay?
I am looking right now. Quick scan. Eagles at 22-1.
That's not bad.
That seems like. Here's Frank's team. Steelers at 20-1. That seems like your value pick right there.
There you go. That's a good pick. The Vegas changed the way they do the Super Bowl odds after 1999 because the Rams were a tremendous number. Like they were I don't know. It's all kind of documented in Chad Millman's book, The Odds, which is a really, really fun book. The Rams were 300-1 or something like that. Like they were really, really high. And a lot of people cashed on the Rams that year because it came out of nowhere with Kurt Warner. And after that, you can't find like 300, 400 to 1 anymore. It's like, yeah, like the Jaguars at 200 to 1 or whatever. You're not getting any higher than that, and you're definitely not, even the Steelers 20 to 1. That might have been 80 to 1 a few years ago, from all I know.
You said the Rams? The Rams
the Kurt Warner year when they won. Yeah, they were. Vegas took a beating, like a legendary beating on the Rams winning a Super Bowl that year, because all the futures tickets out
Phil
there.
Mickelson made a lot of money, didn't he? Wasn't that the story?
That might have been true. Phil likes the gambling. Yeah, he does he likes the action, and I respect that.
Yeah. All right. We will be back next week with this podcast. I think we might do an Oscar theme. Jay and I are doing some video debates about the best sports movies, and so we're going to do a companion podcast to that. So probably not a lot of NFL talk, although if there's a reason, we can also fire one off on that. So we'll be talking sports movies. We can go off on a tangent on football movies, because yes, that's a fun topic. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to battle over Rudy, so I'm going to start getting my points together. Rudy sucks. I'm not going to go off on it completely, but come on. All right. Save it to next week. This has been the Shutdown Corner Podcast. I am Kevin Kaduk with Frank Schwab and Jay Busbee. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next week.